Hey, MBA hopefuls, we are live on the air with MBA Waves, your weekly vidcast talking all things business and education every single Tuesday, bringing you tons of tips to help you get into a top-ranked MBA program and getting you up close and personal with many of these schools that we host on the show, where you can get all your questions answered. If you're new to MBA Waves, I'm your host, Eric Lucrezia, along with Bara Sapir. And Bara, say hi.
Hi, everyone. I think I've got the logo in front of my face, but I'm really here. It's nice to meet everybody who's joining our call today. I'm with City Test Prep and MindFlow, and we're a full-service test prep company and speed reading MindFlow platform. And I'm excited about this conversation because I feel like people need to know what they're going to get out of getting an MBA.
Exactly. Today's episode is all about skills you can expect to gain from an MBA program. So let's get into it. Let's quickly go around the room and start off by introducing each of the panelists. First up, Lindsay Sage, who's a colleague and fellow AGAC member. For those of you who don't know AGAC, this is the Association for International Graduate Admissions Counselors, and that's how we met at the conference last May. Hey, Lindsay, how are you?
Hey, Eric. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here again. And I run my own MBA admissions consulting firm. So it is just me, a boutique firm. My background is in MBA admissions. I worked at NYU Stern as a member of the admissions committee. And prior to that, I worked at Columbia University with undergrads. So I'm based in the New York City area, and my clients are around the world.
Amazing. Thanks, Lindsay. And we have several alumni from various schools. So let's go around the room. And if you could introduce yourself, your name, obviously, where did you get your MBA, where you originally came from and worked, and where you're living and working now. And why don't we start with Brandon?
Thanks, Eric. Hi, everyone. So I'm Brandon Odell. I went to Cambridge Judge Business School. I was class 2011, so it's been a few years, which gives me some time to also think back about how it's been useful as the last decade sort of developed. I'm originally from the States. I was born in West Virginia, and I was a ballet dancer. So I traveled all around the US and ended up working in Europe for several years. And once I decided that my dance career was going to retire from that, I chose to do an MBA to make the transition into a different future. For me, it worked really well, and I'm happy to be here to share my experience and my story with you.
Awesome. And where are you working now?
Now I'm working, I'm director of a foundation called the Amsterdam Dinner Foundation. And it's a nonprofit. We work with private business and family foundations to raise money for HIV projects all around the world. So we work on everything from reproductive rights to LGBTQ issues to funding research projects in the lab.
That's fantastic.
Amazing work.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. All right, up next, Jonny, you want to say hi?
Hey, hello everyone. This is Jonny speaking here. Actually, I joined the MBA through ESSEC. Through Eric. It's very similar pronunciation for me. Through Eric 6 years ago, and I came from China. I was based in Shanghai. That's where I met him. And then I came to ESSEC in France. After that, I stayed in France, and now I live in Paris. I work for an international global industry company as a marketing leader for EMEA region right now. And actually, my background before the MBA was also marketing, but I was kind of entry senior level, and now I really, improve myself into a little bit senior level. And happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, Jonny. And last but not least, Himanshu.
Hey, hi, Eric. Hope you can hear me well now.
Yes.
So I think we're just introducing ourselves. So before my MBA, I was working with Accenture in management consulting in India, and I did my MBA with ESSEC. I was in the Singapore campus throughout my year, and post MBA, I continued to work with Accenture, but I moved from India to UK. So I'm currently based in UK.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought you're in the UK now. Thanks so much. So I'm going to ask the whole room, the alumni at least at this point. So why did you guys choose to pursue an MBA? Like going into it, what skills and experiences did you expect to get out from doing an MBA? And whoever wants to start off, you can just feel free.
I mean, I can start while my connection is working. So I think because I was with Accenture even before the MBA, and I was part of, without having done the MBA, I was somehow part of the management consulting workforce. But I think I was realizing that there's a lot of things that I'm dealing with day to day outside of my own functional expertise that I wasn't really comfortable with. So, as soon as things went out of my own comfort zone and things started getting into a little bit more technical, business oriented, like finance, supply chain, I would have to sort of rely on someone else to bring that experience down the line. And I always felt I'm able to push my boundaries to a level, but having done my engineering and computer science, there was always something that I felt I'm missing. So I think the reason for doing an MBA was obviously to learn more about the business, but I also felt I really didn't know what I don't know. So it was also to explore what else is there in the domain of the business. So I think that was my main purpose to do the MBA.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, they know that an MBA is going to benefit them, but they don't exactly know how or what they're going to get out of it until after they come out of it. So there's surprises for some people. What about you, Jonny?
For me, that time, I feel like I had a little bit thinking process was in mind what I'm gonna do in the next 10 years, because I was around 30 that time, and actually I was already working in the marketing, and things like I stayed there, it was pretty good, but then really I want to do for the next 10 years, do I want to switch? I was not in a position I know I don't want, but also I'm in a position I don't know if I want. So I feel like, okay, at least what I want is go out, similar to, what Himanshu mentioned, that I want to go out of the comfort zone to really see what I don't know, and maybe gonna change my mind. And it happened actually.
It certainly can happen that way. And Brandon?
Yeah, like I said, for me, it was part of a transition out of a career that I've been doing for 15 years, and it was time for me to go and to do something else. So I actually looked around quite a bit on what could help me transition from the dance career that I had, taking those skills and then moving it into a new career. And so I went in and I actually set in on classes for several different degree programs. And through doing that, I learned really quickly that the people who were doing the MBA, the sort of drive that people had, and also the sort of well-rounded coursework, I thought would fit for me. It gave me a sort of broad sense of how to run a business, knowing that eventually I wanted to either get back into the arts at a management level or something in nonprofit. That was sort of my longer term goal. And for me, the MBA, it was also, I have to really be honest, that it was a 2-year degree instead of having to go back and do, let's say, an undergraduate degree for something else, because I already had I could go straight into the MBA because of the BA that I had done. So something like law in the US, where it was going to be like 6 years, which I also looked into, I was like, no way, I'm not going down that route. But what else could take me into the nonprofit world? And really quickly, it was the MBA.
Yeah, an MBA is probably one of the most transversal degrees you can do, and
Exactly.
It seems like a really good choice for someone in your position. Before we get into some of the specific skills, I wanted to ask Lindsay, as a coach, what do your clients tell you about what they're hoping to get out of an MBA?
Yeah. So I would say my traditional clients that are coming from, maybe their background was in business, so say that they did an undergraduate in business and they already have that business framework, I would say that they really enjoy the like business communication, the negotiation classes, because they've found in their job so far that business framework has set them up to do certain things, but they don't feel like they can really get into that higher level leadership unless they've kind of had that training in an environment where they can really make mistakes. So, it's sort of like high stakes when you're at your job, even if you come from a super collaborative culture, you don't want to like keep messing up all of the time with your colleagues, right? So like to be in an environment where you can really be vulnerable and be open and ask questions that you might not be able to ask in your current role, I think it's what a lot of my more traditional applicants are getting out of it. And non-traditional applicants, people from backgrounds in humanities and such, they really want that business framework. They've never taken an accounting class. They've never taken a statistics class, or data analytics is a part of every industry, even if you want to go into marketing or something like that. So I feel like they're really the core classes are so vital for them.
That's really interesting, Lindsay. I'm also thinking about your background of having worked with undergrads and working with business school students now, and there's probably a really big difference between those different sets of students. I don't know if you work with undergrads now at all, but would you say that there's just a big leap between those two sets of students?
Huge leap. And I would say, what's interesting is that the people that go into undergraduate business programs and get like a BBA, or they know from the very beginning they want to study econ, they tend to be, really ambitious people. And then they go into consulting firms or banking roles. But there's still a reason later on for them to get the MBA, because your ambition can only take you so far without real training of what you're going to do with that and how you're going to do that responsibly. So I feel like even those with a background in business, and even if they've gone to a really strong BBA program like University of Michigan or something like that, I know, I realized as I was saying that, they get so much out of an MBA, even if, so I feel like a lot of times it would be, well, you already have a business background, you worked at McKinsey, why on earth would you need an MBA? You get so much out of it.
Yeah, and also when we look at, where Brandon has come from, right, with the dance world and the arts world, and then you also have these BBA students, it's just such an interesting cross-section, but I believe, and I'm curious if you'd all agree, that ambition and that curiosity, which Brandon, I feel like you touched upon, is there. And one thing that people don't usually touch upon, even on the show, is the athleticism. So even though, Brandon, you were doing dance, which is so athletic, right? And I have to say that in all the years that I've been working with students, a lot of my MBA-bound students have some sort of sports and athletics physicality to them. So I think that's really, actually, it's really interesting that you did wind up there, Brandon, because you were so physical in your career. I'm curious also about the hard skills, right? Like a lot of people, like you were saying, Lindsay, come to the program and they want to have those core classes. But what are some of the other skills that you experienced that you did expect and that you didn't expect and that you did get? And anyone could just pop up and say. So I'm just curious, like, what skills did you get that you expected to get? But then there were some other skills that you didn't expect to get, just hard skills that you wound up getting in the program.
I'll jump in. For me, it was really interesting because I knew that I was making a huge transition. And so I knew that there was going to be loads to learn coursework-wise. I'd studied business in undergraduate, was part of my undergraduate studies. And I had also had statistics, and but it was a long time ago before I went into the MBA. So it's also like to brush up on those hard skills, but also then to take it to a new level, take it to another level. So I expected some accounting and economics and corporate finance. These things that I counted on. The things that I didn't count on was the sort of interaction among the students. And so for me, there were some people who came from backgrounds where, they were really awkward in social situations, or how to carry themselves, or how to have these sort of softer skills, where I needed to touch up on, like, okay, how do we do corporate finance? Like, I've never had a corporate finance class. And so we actually worked together in lots of ways. Like other students, we would, I would help on things I knew about, and they would also, in turn, coach me in corporate finance. And I thought that was really interesting, and how those two things work together. And you mentioned negotiations. Like, I learned so much in the negotiation course, especially about how people from different backgrounds approach negotiation and what that is about. And so it was fascinating to me. Taking in this environment where we're just talking about like some hard skills and taking courses, there are still so many levels, so many different layers that you're actually learning on.
Yeah, it sounds like those levels are super important too, because you're meeting so many people, right, that come from different backgrounds, and that they have their own lens and perspective of where they come from, and then you're working in a collaborative way in business.
Exactly. Yeah.
So different people's
and
strengths.
competitive. It's collaborative and competitive. I remember
Right.
the first day, I thought, oh, I'm a dancer, like everyone will give me a free ride. And so we were in groups and we had to do something and present, and they just like threw the marker in my hand and they're like, you do it. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, and it was, just sort of, there wasn't the slack cut or an excuse that I came from a different background, and that I really appreciated in the end.
Right. And as a dancer, you're both doing the inner work on stage and the outward, right? And so that might translate, I would imagine, beautifully in presentations. How about others? Are there any hard skills that you picked up that you expected, but some that you might not have?
Well, I can maybe again and the second one to reply. So actually, for me, I have to say I was exactly the profile Lindsay was describing. I never did marketing before. I did marketing quite a long time before I started doing the MBA. So the first idea I had was to kind of understand the marketing framework being recognized for all the business school, for all the business people in the world, how to compare it with my real daily work, what I understood from my experience. So this is the first thing I was trying to do, and including among that there was a lot of hard skills, which including kind of people management, accounting, kind of whatever. Just I heard a lot of familiar course names earlier. So, but if I talk about the unexpected, I think it's mainly the part who kind of bring me a little bit higher. For example, one course I remember have a very heavy impression was the geography. Geopolitics. Geopolitics, yeah. So this is the type of thing. Definitely, that was the course I was not expected to know, but when I had it, I realized how impactful it is, especially for me. I'm mainly kind of regional marketer. Before I was Asia Pacific, now Europe. There is a lot of consideration between, not just for, actually matters for marketing as well. So I guess it's from me.
I remember that course that was taught by Sedimir Nestorovic at ESSEC at the Singapore campus. He's like an expert in geopolitics in Asia and tying in how business is affected by geopolitics, like culture, religion, all that stuff is super important and fascinating. And I think that was one of the favorite courses that a lot of the ESSEC students got out of it, the program rather. But pivoting over from hard to soft skills, or as some people call it, human skills, a lot of people argue this is even more important. I mean, when you're coming from a background, again, Brandon, you're probably kind of the extreme example, something so far from business, right? Dancing, which is so physical, but yet there's also probably a lot of transferable skills when you're working as a dance troupe or a team that you can transfer to the boardroom. And I think that's maybe how you made your case for admission. But what were some of the soft skills that you guys picked up during the MBA, either from classes or from networking events or from team activities, group projects, either that you were expecting to gain or surprised you? Whoever would like to start off.
I think I can.
Well, Brandon brought up the negotiation, right? And working with different people. I would imagine just the cultural, right? Like the soft skills of dealing and how to navigate through different cultural. I mean, John, you sort of touched upon that a little bit, but kind of. But those two things are probably super important. And I would imagine even more so important now, although other people say history keeps repeating itself. And so we shouldn't be so surprised about what's happening now. But what happens if you're at a university and you're with, your teammates are Russians and Ukrainians, or your teammates are Pakistanis and Indians, right? Like, how do you, like, there's probably some really ample soft skills that are needed in those situations, I'd imagine. Am I right?
For my first group work that we did at Cambridge, there was myself, so an American who lived in the Netherlands. There was a man from Turkey, a man from China, a man from Korea, and a woman from Mexico. It was the five of us. And so it was this really diverse group of not only, so the hard skills were different throughout the group, but also language skills and cultural references. And one of the things that blew my mind, that even to this day, like where I learned to really check myself about assumptions was that we were in this group, and I come from a very competitive background. So I wanted to be the best MBA student that there ever was, who ever walked through Cambridge. And so I would study every night, and I would show up on time, and I would carry my books, and I would study. And like I noticed that my teammates weren't showing up to meetings on time, and they were, like late handing things into the group, and I was really struggling with it. And one day we were in a course that goes along with the group work, and the professor asked, who in this class wants to get like an A, wants to get, a perfect score. And of course I raised my hand, and I look around, and I'm one of the few people in the room who raised my hand, and the only person in my group. And I was like, wow, why would you come here and not want to get a good grade and not do the best? And so later in our group work, I asked them about it. And I was like, why didn't you raise your hand? And they're like, listen, Brendan, it's great if you want to get a good grade. I'm not here to get a good grade. I'm here to get a job in London. Like, I want to stay in the UK, and that's my goal. And everything that I'm doing is focused there. And I was like, So it was this light bulb of a moment where like my assumptions are definitely not their assumptions, and we're all here for some sort of greater good, but that doesn't always have to be the same thing. And it's a story even 10 years later I keep coming back to remind myself, check your assumptions.
It's a very interesting point, actually, what you just said about, why would you be here if you're not fighting for an A, like the good grades thing. And it reminds me of an article I actually read today in Poets and Quants, and the line was something like, undergraduates chase grades and MBA students chase opportunities. And sometimes people will sacrifice getting an A in that class because they have an opportunity for a networking event, or they're going to dedicate that time to working on a group project or interviewing for a job. And, an MBA is very much an experience. It's also a bridge to get you to your next place. So it's not an endpoint, it's not a destination. But when you speak about like interpersonal communication and working as a team, it's so difficult when you think everything's been explained clearly, you're all on the same page, you have the same objectives, and yet there are very different takes on what was said, what we're supposed to do, and what our goals are sometimes. And then throw in the next layer of different cultural backgrounds, different languages spoken. Oof. Like what you see that is clearly green for someone else is clearly pink. And that can be mind-opening. And I think it teaches a lot of empathy, patience, and how to communicate effectively without, offending people or backing people into a corner so they don't want to work with you or for you. Huge, huge leadership lessons, right?
It's huge leadership lessons because you gain a whole new perspective that you didn't have before. And what Brandon was like, it sounds like aha moments, right? Like these aha moments. And then all of a sudden having that quick shift of perspective just allows you to think differently henceforth. It's just an amazing opportunity. Can you imagine if every time that happened, that there's a course that you write down every aha moment that you have for a semester? That'd be fun.
Who else wants to share some other soft skills you may have gotten during the MBA, if any?
Being comfortable with silence.
So I think I just wanted to add to what both Brandon and Lindsay was saying earlier, because I think one of the things that I really appreciated was the whole MBA experience is kind of a sandbox, because when you are in the job, you're not really, always following the rules and following the lines. And one of the very stuff that was interesting and expected to me was you are going into the MBA to study finance and expecting to study about supply chain and all of those things. What I didn't expect was how practical it can get, right? So it's not just about sitting in class and listening from the professor about all of the technical stuff, but then when you go back to your groups and work on a problem for a week or 2 weeks, and then when you had a chance to actually look at the same problem, and then you realize if you are in a group of 5 people, everybody's approaching it so differently, and their experiences are very different from your experience, and their assumptions that they are making to even interpret the problem is also very different. That's an experience in its own way, and somehow you work together as a group of 5, and then you present a problem and present a solution. And then what is even more interesting, when the other group started to share their solutions or share their ideas, sometimes it really blows your mind. Then you say, I would have never thought of it in this way, because you have a set way of thinking. And even now, in my job, I think there are times when if a problem comes, I probably, think about, okay, this is how I would approach, but then how would, other people would the same problem, and, how my friend from the MBA would have approached this problem. So just that experience of having, in a very short period of time, having worked on hundreds of problems, thousands of case studies, does give you an experience which is almost unparalleled. I mean, this is something you can't expect to get in your real job.
Yeah, there's a deadline. You have to get the project done. You better figure it out. Learn how to work together.
That's amazing. Lindsay, I'm curious from your perspective as a coach, what kind of soft skills do you see your clients most looking for getting and investing in an MBA to achieve these new soft skills?
Yeah, I think it's the network. I feel like that what hasn't been said yet is just how when we just bought a house, so we need like a guy for everything. We need like a guy that does this, a guy does that, and we keep like messaging people. You have a guy for this, you have a guy for that.
Totally.
And I think right, yes. But the slang, the slang of it is you have a guy, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so I think that it's about your own personal skill development, but I think like so much greater than that is about having a person in your network for everything, And so particularly like I've had clients say, I never have to go on a job interview again, or like, and I'm 42, so the people in my world that have MBAs, like my local friends, they're 15 years out, and they pivot careers all of the time and never have to do anything other than reach out to people that they knew in business school for a coffee, and they're on to their next pivot. So what I think is interesting actually is that a lot of time my clients immediately, like they won't get the summer internship exactly the way they wanted it to be, or they won't have their first job be exactly what they wanted. But if I contact them 3, 5 years, 10 years down the road, it's absolutely trending in the right direction. And I think that's all a part of the MBA. And that all goes back to the MBA because of that huge collective network, because of that brand name, and because of all of the people that you meet. You want to pivot into the sports industry. There's somebody that did that, and you're a part of that network already. I just think there's very few other parts of life where you can like have a guy for any industry or job that you want to go into.
Absolutely. A lot of people argue that's the main reason for doing an MBA. And it's not only about the network that you acquire, but it's about the skills that you learn and how to go about growing your network. Like a lot of people are not necessarily comfortable. There are people who are natural introverts, or there's the whole spectrum of different cultures and how networking is approached. And first of all, like MBA itself it's for better or for worse an American invention. And no matter where you're doing an MBA, there's a largely, let's say, American international business way of going about things, which can be vastly different depending where in the world you're coming from. But then there's also the local nuances of how you should go about networking and approaching making new contacts. If you're here in France, if you're in Latin America, if you're in the Middle East, and so on, all those kind of codes. And I think that is a big part of what you can pick up at the business school that you choose to attend. But I wanted to ask the alum in the room, some of you have touched on this already, but if anyone has anything else to add about how have the skills that you've learned during your MBA program paid off in your career since you've graduated?
Actually, I think I can start. So literally, so I talked about the hard skill because I knew that time I want to do marketing. I want to do more about digital marketing because I was thinking that that's kind of the trend. But because I didn't have any digital marketing background before, so after I graduated school, I was not starting as digital marketing manager right away. But I actually went back to kind of like general marketing. But a few years before, actually during the pandemic, there's a chance many companies switching to digital marketing. So I took the chance, and one of the points I validated myself to my leadership is that I took MBA, which I took a lot of digital marketing course, and I had a very high score. Wow. I think for them, it doesn't matter about whether you have a high score or not, but they see definitely I was not kind of like white paper, to start over again. So they put trust on me, and I took it, even though the real work, the complexity is 100 times more than the study we had, but still.
Anyone else to add anything? Sorry about the background noise.
I would say confidence is one thing. Back to Bara's point of what have my clients said is a real soft skill that they weren't expecting, just real confidence. You got through a really rigorous program. You had recruiters after you. Building confidence, public speaking is another huge one that I've consistently heard.
Yeah, and thank you, Lindsay. And I guess this is more back to the alumni. Do you feel that the employers you've had post-MBA value the skills you gained during your MBA? And how much would you say, like on a scale of 1 to 10, if you had to estimate, did your employers really value the skills that you gained? On a scale from 1 to 10, like, could you be where you are now without having decided to do your MBA? What do you guys think?
I think it's a really good question. And for me, it sort of, the couple of jobs I had before what I'm doing now, I think the MBA played a much larger role in. So my first job out of the MBA was actually for an airline. So it was a corporate world, and it was actually an MBA track management position. And so that was definitely MBA related. They only took MBAs. And so then a couple years later, then I still wanted to get back into the nonprofit world, and I ended up working with an HIV researcher here in the Netherlands, which is how I got into global health, and setting up a private fundraising department in his research institute. And that initial idea for us to work together was also because of what I had studied and the skills that I had acquired and experience that I had acquired along the way. And I think the further I get away from it, the maybe the less linear or less strict that connection is. It's not one for one, but I think I wouldn't be able to be in the position I am without the skills and experience I gained along the way, of course. So I think for me, the MBA certainly pointed me in the trajectory that I wanted to go. I think just to follow up with what Lindsay was saying, I ended up taking a detour through the corporate world before getting back into the nonprofit world where I wanted to be. But I think those skills and what I learned in the networks I made along the way enriched. So it was almost as if the MBA, the first couple of years after I finished at Cambridge, were still part of that MBA experience. For me, it was very much related.
Interesting. What about you, Himanshu?
I think I can say, because I'm in the same industry and in the same function, I could say I could have been here without the MBA, but I definitely want to say it would have been much harder, because I don't want to repeat what Lindsay said, because when you asked for the skills, the first skill that came to my mind was confidence. And having gone through the experience of so much real life experience, got a kind of sandbox experience. When you're asked to do something, I feel like I'm much more, I can do this, and I just know the framework and I just know the process, about solving them. So the problem solving skill is, I've been much less confident if I was in the same position without the MBA. And I think that's the skill that the employers do value. They may not value, in my specific case, the hard skills that I got, they value the soft skills I got.
Yeah, thanks for your candor, because I think that some people, are on the fence and they wonder, do I really need the MBA? And like you're saying, that the soft skills wind up winning the day, right? They wind up being a really important part, not just only in business, but in life. right? I'm sure that these negotiation skills come in handy when you're buying a house and when you're doing other things, right?
But not only negotiating with clients, also negotiating your salary, which is, I remember, workshops that I've seen a lot of MBA programs offering negotiating. I've also specifically seen salary negotiations for women, which is another.
I went to that one.
Oh, okay.
I went to that one. Actually, I learned something from. I still remember the what they mentioned. One word, they said women get used to ask to show your performance, and then after ask for the pay. When men get used to ask pay first, and then do whatever they can do for this pay. So after that, I was telling myself, I have to switch my mind. I have to ask something first, and then start doing it for that pay. So yeah, it definitely works.
Something to work towards. Interesting.
Yeah, that's amazing. Lindsay, what about when you talk to former clients? How has their decision to complete an MBA paid off?
Yeah, I think it's the network. I very rarely meet anyone that will regret it. And actually, I was thinking this. I was like thinking hard. Have I met anyone who's regretted the MBA? People sometimes get bummed because they wanted to work for McKinsey and they ended up at Deloitte, and they consider that, a real catastrophic emergency, but they get over that quick. They start working and they realize they're on fun projects and great people. And I feel like there's just a lot more fluidity and flexibility that they get to have throughout their career. So that's what I can consistently keep hearing. It's also for many of my clients, just the MBA is such a reset button for them. I was just meeting with someone this morning who's, a banker, and she's just like, I need just 2 years to just stop. And, so I think it's such a wonderful opportunity to, at that point in your life, kind of just shift your framework and your way of thinking.
Absolutely. I mean, not to give anyone watching the show today the false idea that an MBA is some kind of break, that you're going to chill out. Because by no
banker it is, I guess.
Or maybe in consulting even more so. But no, it is at the same time probably the last time that you'll be able to put all the BS to the side and really just focus on you for the first time in a long time, since you were an undergrad, and probably the last time you will until you retire, that you'll be able to really just stop everything and focus on you and your development. So it is a real opportunity if you can, carve out the time and money. Let's not, forget that it does cost money, but there is definitely, I think, a return on an investment that any alum that I've talked to has recovered that investment. Go ahead, Jonny.
Yeah. Just one more point, actually, because I realized one of the MBA thing what told me was how to self-learning, because actually, I think kind of in Asian culture, in the academic world, we've been get used to the learning more mode to our generation when we were a kid. We get used to the learning more mode get from the teacher. But I forgot I could self-learning, so I could actually learn anything as I want in any time. So MBA kind of bring me back to the learning mode. So after MBA, I realized I could learn whatever the course MBA I learned in the MBA, but if I didn't starting the MBA, I didn't even realizing that.
It's very true. I see that as a recurring theme with a lot of alumni offices that have this lifetime learning approach where they continually offer either free access to classes for life, like 1 or 2 per year that you can take as an alum, or just workshops or ways to keep that learning going. But I think part of the soft skills that you learn in an MBA is you're taught how to teach yourself ongoing and to always go on, because the technology is changing faster and faster. And if you want to stay fresh, you have to continually upskill, and you're not going to, let's be honest, you're not going to stop every 5 years and do an MBA. It's just not possible. So teaching how to keep going on, that's very true. Guys, this has been fascinating, and I love talking to all of you, but we don't want to go on forever. I know you all have things to do. You're all in different time zones and have different meals to cook and enjoy. So anything else you want to share about skills in the MBA world before we wrap it up?
Or advice, if you have any advice.
Yes. Tips for anyone thinking about applying for.
What I want to add, because Sorry. Eric, I was just saying one thing I want to add because McKinsey came up was I think a good MBA should also make you question what you want, because I think a lot of people come into the MBA saying my goal is I finish my MBA and then I get a job in McKinsey, but a good MBA should make you question that, and make you question why do you want to achieve something that you want to achieve. So a lot of the people think they know exactly what they want, but during the MBA experience, if it's one of the skills you get is really question where you want to go and achieve in your life and reframe your objectives and goals in life, because I think that's really important to get out of, because if you have changed your mindset, you still have a lot to learn, I think.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah, following up on that, I was just going to say, get curious. Get curious about yourself, your own goals, about the opportunities in the program, the courses, but also your fellow students. There's so many stories you can learn from and interesting people you'll meet along the way. So ask questions and get curious.
Stay curious, stay hungry. Sounds like a Steve Jobs speech. Anyone else?
Could be worse.
For me, it would be, I would suggest not just looking at the ranking of the school you're going to do, actually more looking at the city where it locates, where the culture you're interested, who might be the profile of the previous cohorts. So actually the city impacting, like Paris, France, impacting much more than just the school, which it brings, because of school I came here. And when I came here, it was not really ranking high at times. So,
anyone else before we wrap it up?
I would just say the MBA is a terrific industry agnostic degree. So even though it's in business, it's in leadership, they're really just training you to be a leader, and that's useful for any industry. And so, in my mind, it's the best degree out there.
I couldn't agree more.
Very versatile.
All right. Well, listen, I want to thank all of you for joining us on the show today. You've been fantastic guests, Brandon, Lindsay, Himanshu, and Jonny. It's been fun, as always. Of course, Bara. And as always, we'll be on the air next week with MBA Waves, episode 74. And we'll be talking with Cambridge Judge Business School, which is exactly where Brandon went. So see you all next week. Stay tuned and have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye.